Hello and welcome to my channel. I am back with another SQL video. In this video, I am going to explain you the difference between range between and rows between in the SQL. So if you know about analytical functions in SQL, you might know about rows between. Now, if you don't know about analytical functions, just watch some videos on YouTube about that because there are already so much of videos on this topic, so I don't want to create another one. I'm going to explain you what's not covered in that videos. So you may have seen rows between while solving a SQL problem with analytical functions. But do you know there is one more clause like rows between which is almost same and generates same results. The clause is range between. So this can be asked in the interview, so I am going to explain the difference between them. So what are these clauses? Both rows and range between clause in the SQL limit the rows considered by window function within a partition. So let me show you and explain this with an example. So here I am in my SQL editor. I have a table called wages. There are 3 columns in this table. The first column is worker ID, second is the date, and the third is the wage. So let me show you how rows between and range between works. So I am going to first explain the rows between clause and show you how this clause limits the rows considered by a window function within a partition. Okay. So I am going to take the running sum of this wages column. Okay. Wages of over partition by worker ID order by date as running some rs. Okay, let me run this thing. Okay, it's wage. So see here, I've calculated the running sum. So let me first explain you what's happening here. So by default, the rows considered while processing are unbounded preceding till the current row. Okay, so suppose SQL is processing this first row, so it will check all the rows above it and the current row. So above this 100 there are no rows and current row is 100, so it will sum this thing and the rs is 100. Okay, now coming to the second row, before this there is one row, so it's 100 plus 150 is 250. So before 200 there are 2 rows, so 100 plus 150 250 plus 200 it's 450. So it's going like that. Okay, so I have partitioned it by worker ID. So for each worker ID it will calculate. So for example, if you see here, again it will create another partition for this worker ID because I have partition by worker, and again it will start with 200. So before 200 nothing is there, so 200 plus 0 is 200, 300 plus 200 is 500, 200 plus 500, 250 plus 500 is 750, and 150 plus 750 is 900. Okay, so by default it's unbounded preceding till the current row. So if I write here rows between unbounded preceding and current row, notice it will generate the same result, current row. So notice it has generated the same result because by default the rows considered are the rows between unbounded preceding and the current row. So suppose you want to change this thing and only consider one rows below above the current row and the current row. So what you can do, you can write here one preceding. Okay, so we want to check only one row above the current row and the current row. Okay, so let me run this thing. So if you see, 100 is the current row and before that there are no rows, so 100 plus 0 is 100. If you see here, 150 and the previous one row is 100. So 150 plus 100 is 250. Now here for 200 it will check one row. It's not unbounded preceding, it's one preceding, so it will check only for one row below, one row above it. So 200 plus 150 is 350. Again for 250 it will check previous row and the current row. So 250 plus 200 is 450. So it's like that. So suppose you want to check you want to check the current row and the previous one row and the next one row. So you will do here one preceding and one following. Okay, so if you see here 100, and we want to check one preceding row and one next row. So 100 preceding row is 0, so before 100 it's nothing. So 100 plus 0 is 100, and the next we want to check the next one row also. So 100 plus 150 is 250. Okay, so if you see here for 150 it's one previous row plus current row plus next one row. So 100 plus 150 plus 200, it's 450. So here also for 200 it will check previous one row, next one row and the current row. So 200 plus 250, 450, 450 plus 150, it's 600. So this rows clause and range clause limit the number of rows in a partition. Okay, while calculating the result, it limits the rows in a partition. So now let me show you the difference between the range and the rows. So if I do here again rows between unbounded preceding and current row. So this is the default one, default Windows spec. So if you see here we got the running sum. Now suppose in place of rows I am writing range, what will happen? See, there is no difference. 100 plus 100, 150 plus 100, 250, 200 plus 250, 450, 200 plus 450, it's 700. So there is no difference between the range and rows between clause till now, but I'll show you how they are different from each other. So let me insert one more row in this thing, in this table. So I'll insert into. So for worker 1 and for date 1st of January 2023, for worker 1 I am adding one more column with wage 150. Okay, so I have inserted one more row. So let me show you how the data looks now. So for worker 1, for date 1, okay, for 1st of January there are two records, one is here and one is here. So don't bother about how this is duplicated by mistake. Suppose by mistake it's duplicated. So now I am going to show you what's the difference here. So let me again change this range to rows between. Let me run this thing. Okay, let me copy this data into a G sheet. So I have copied this data into a G sheet, and this is for rows between. Okay, so rows between. Okay, so let me use range between and copy this result of range between side by side, and then you will notice the difference here. Okay, so let me go to the SQL editor. So I have used range between clause now, and I am copying this data into G sheet again. So I have copied that data into a G sheet for rows between and range between clause. So if you notice here, for rows between, when the date column is duplicated, so here the date column has duplicates. Okay, so we have two dates here for 1st January 2023. So while calculating the running sum, the rows between will consider this two duplicates as separate rows. Okay, so it's calculating 100 plus previous all the rows, 100 plus 0 is 100. Then for this state 150 plus all the rows above that current row, so 150 plus 100 is 250. Okay, and for this is not duplicated, so 150 plus 250 is 400. But when you notice the range between clause, so what happens in the range between clause? Range between clause consider all the duplicates as a single row. So consider this as a single row. So what is the sum of this thing? 100 plus 150, it's 250. So it will calculate 250 for this also and 250 for this also. And now for this thing second where it is not duplicated, it will calculate 150 plus 200, it's 400. Okay, so the difference between the range between clause and rows between clause is when we have duplicates in the order by clause. So I'm ordering this this thing on the date column. So when the date column is duplicated, we will have the different result for rows between clause and range between clause. So whenever the column on which we are ordering by is duplicated, we will have the different result sets. Okay, for rows between and range between. Otherwise rows between and range between both clause are same. Okay, so I hope you like this video and learned something new. For more such SQL videos, you can subscribe to my channel. Until next time, bye.